Welcome to Daily Harmony. We all chase those aha moments, right? Those times when everything just feels peaceful.
Yeah, that sense of calm we all crave.
But then, well, life happens. Things get busy, worries creep in, and that peace, it can feel pretty fragile, can't it?
Definitely fleeting sometimes.
So today, we're really going to dig into an idea from A Course in Miracles, specifically Lesson 200. It makes this bold claim. There is no peace except the peace of God.
Quite a statement.
It is. And our mission really is to unpack that. What does it mean? How does this peace of God differ from the peace we think we find in the world? And why does the lesson insist God is the only lasting source? We'll be drawing on the Lesson 200 study guide, Cultivating the Peace of God, the workbook itself, and the Peace of God analysis.
Lots to explore there.
Absolutely. And maybe start by asking yourself this. Have you ever found a sense of peace, maybe after achieving something or during a quiet moment, only for it to, well, evaporate later? This deep dive looks at why that happens and suggests a whole different way to think about peace.
Yeah, and that core statement, there is no peace except the peace of God. It's really the starting point. It's quite absolute.
Doesn't leave much room for alternatives, does it?
No, it really doesn't. The lesson and the guides we're looking at, they're pretty clear that this deep, enduring peace isn't something we, manufacture ourselves or find just lying around in our external circumstances.
So it's not about getting the perfect job or relationship?
Well, the lesson argues those things might bring temporary satisfaction, but not this fundamental peace. Think of it like trying to get a stable Wi-Fi signal.
Okay.
You have to connect to the right network, the actual source. The Course suggests true peace works, like that you need to connect to the source.
Okay, so let's unpack that distinction then. Worldly peace versus this divine peace, what we usually call peace in our lives, like maybe a quiet Sunday morning or finishing a big project.
The feeling of relief or satisfaction, yeah.
Exactly. The study guide calls that kind of peace the one tied to external things, temporary and superficial. And honestly, that kind of rings true, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like the feeling after a really good meal. It's great.
But you get hungry again.
You get hungry again. It doesn't sustain you indefinitely. That worldly peace, according to the Cultivating the Peace of God source, it's contingent. It depends on things outside us staying just right.
And things outside us, they don't tend to stay just right, do they?
Rarely. People change, situations shift, possessions break or get lost. So if your peace is built on that, it's like building your house on sand that's constantly moving.
You're basically setting yourself up for disappointment, or at least a constant search.
Exactly. A cycle of finding it and losing it, finding it and losing it. That's what the Course suggests happens when we pin our hopes on these fleeting things.
Okay, so if that's worldly peace temporary, conditional, what's the alternative? What is this peace of God? The analysis calls it inherent and enduring.
Keywords there. Inherent, enduring.
It sounds like a totally different category. Not something you get, but something that just is part of God's nature.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's not presented as a reward God gives out, like, oh, you've been good, here's some peace.
Right.
It's more like peace is the essence of God. It's a fundamental attribute, like light is to the sun. It's just what it is.
So experiencing it isn't about earning it, but about connecting to it, aligning with it.
Exactly. That's the term the study guide uses, aligning with God.
Yeah.
It applies a shift, a turning towards that source. It's like tuning a radio.
Yeah.
You have to tune in to the right frequency to hear the music clearly.
And the reason we need to tune in, according to the lesson and the analysis, is because all the static, all the conflict and unease we feel, it stems from feeling disconnected, from feeling separate from God.
That's the core diagnosis, yes. This sense of separation from God is presented as the root of all conflict. Anxiety, fear, arguments, inner turmoil.
Wow, that's a huge claim. So my argument with my neighbor or my stress about deadlines, it traces back to that.
From the Course's perspective, yes. It suggests that feeling separate makes us feel vulnerable, like we're alone and have to fight for everything, defend ourselves constantly. That fundamental sense of lack or isolation is seen as the breeding ground for all these other conflicts.
It's like a plant pulled out of the soil, it's going to struggle because it's cut off from its source.
That's a great analogy. And if we're operating from that feeling of being cut off, we naturally feel fear. We strive, we compete. We create conflict.
So the Course is saying, recognize that the separation itself is the illusion. Address that, and the conflict starts to dissolve.
Yes. Undermine the foundation of the conflict, which is that sense of being separate and alone.
Okay, so the solution isn't necessarily fixing every single external problem, but addressing this internal feeling of disconnect. The analysis says we need to shift our focus inward towards a connection with the divine,
Right.
which sounds good, but
Yeah.
how? How do you actually do that when you're juggling work, family, everything else?
Well, the workbook offers some practical steps. It's not just abstract theory. Meditation is a big one.
Yeah.
Just setting aside some quiet time, focusing inward, intending to connect. Maybe even visualizing God's peace as like a light surrounding you. It's not about forcing some huge mystical event.
Just creating the space.
Yeah, creating a quiet space internally where you can become more aware of the peace that's supposedly always there, underneath the noise.
Mm.
Like finding a quiet spot in a really loud party.
That makes sense. And then there are affirmations.
The idea of consciously choosing your thoughts. So when you feel that anxiety rising, you repeat something like, I choose the peace of God. Study guide calls it a mental anchor.
Like pulling your mind back when it starts to spin out.
Exactly. It's a deliberate redirection. You're acknowledging the stressful thoughts, but choosing to focus on the peace instead. It's like training a muscle, training your mind to return to that place of calm.
It takes practice, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. It's a repatterning process.
And it seems like it's not just passive either. There's this mindfulness exercise mentioned actively noticing when you don't feel peaceful.
Yes. And then looking at the thoughts or beliefs that are connected to that feeling. What are you telling yourself in that moment?
That sounds really powerful, actually. Like becoming a detective of your own mind, figuring out what triggers the lack of peace.
It really builds self-awareness. You start to see the patterns.
Yeah.
Oh, when I think this thought, I feel stressed. How does that thought stack up against the idea of the peace of God?
And then journaling ties into that.
Yeah, it builds on it. At the end of the day, maybe reflect on times you did feel that peace. What was going on then? How did it feel? How did it influence how you acted or thought?
So you're tracking both the presence and the absence of peace and what contributes to each, like keeping, I don't know, an inner weather journal.
That's a good way to put it. You're learning your own internal climate and what affects it. So yeah, these are tangible practices. It's not just wishful thinking.
So bringing it back to the listener, if someone feels like they're just constantly buffeted by stress, by conflict, internal or external, why does this lesson, this perspective, matter so much?
Well, think about it. If you've been trying really hard to find lasting peace by arranging your external world perfectly,
Which is impossible.
right, and if it's left you feeling frustrated or like you're always falling short, this lesson offers a completely different approach. It says, hey, the peace you're looking for, it's not out there, it's in here.
An inside job.
Totally.
Right.
It's suggesting that true, deep, unwavering peace is already part of your nature, accessible through this connection to the divine, to God. It's an inward path to something constant, something that doesn't depend on the world behaving itself, like finding a deep underground spring that never runs dry, no matter the weather on the surface.
That's a compelling image. So wrapping things up then, the big takeaway from Lesson 200 is really this stark contrast. Worldly peace is fleeting, conditional. The peace of God is inherent, eternal, the only true peace.
And that conflict arises from feeling separate.
Right. And the way to experience that true peace is to turn inward, to cultivate that connection through practices like meditation, using affirmations, being mindful of our thoughts, maybe journaling about it.
It's about shifting where you look for peace.
From outside to inside. Recognizing that while worldly things can bring temporary comfort, they're ultimately
Unfulfilling in terms of deep, lasting peace. That's the message.
Which brings us to that reflection question from the lesson itself.
Yeah, it's a powerful one to sit with. What does it mean to you to experience the peace of God? And how can you cultivate this peace in your everyday life?
It really puts it back on us, doesn't it? It's not just intellectual understanding.
Not at all. It's an invitation to personal exploration.
Maybe something to chew on. In the next few days, perhaps just try noticing. Notice when you feel peaceful, even fleetingly, and when you feel that familiar churn of conflict or anxiety. Where are you looking for relief in those moments? Just observe, without judgment. It might just be the start of seeing where real peace might actually lie for you.
A powerful practice in itself.